Welcome back to Unmuted Nation. And obviously, it's been a tumultuous week for a tumultuous last 8 days. And for some, a really tumultuous life that a lot of people are beginning to get insight into for the first time. For the last 5 days, we've been re-airing the Black Men Hear Me series. It's a series that focused on just insight and some perspective and emotion and just a platform that we gave Black men to understand, for people to understand how they think and some of their thoughts. And we thought it was viable and necessary to re-air that series that we had just completed 3 weeks ago. And so we've been off the air since then. And I wanted to come back with some responsible conversation, I could literally come back and just tell you how mad I am, because I'm very upset, and I wake up mad every day, and that's very abnormal for me. I'm used to being able to step into my own every day, believing that it will be a great day, and while I still believe that, I have been mad every day. And so instead of using this platform to express that, I felt it was better for me to talk about methods. And I'm not looking for a lot of BS pacification or previous methods that have been used to kind of squash issues just for lip service. And so in the cabinet today, I have Jazmine Henley-Brown. She's been here before. And some person, and let me just focus on, I haven't had the opportunity to have you here, Dr. Vonnetta West, but one of my favorite people is joining us for this cabinet segment today, Vonnetta West. And so thank you so much, ladies, for being here, of course. As always, I'm hoping that we'll have some really, really fruitful and insightful conversation. The cabinet is really, for if you're tuning in for the first time or listening for the first time, it's a place that we kind of go to have conversation, create solutions. And as we kind of discuss these things, our hope is that you take this conversation, the basis of this conversation, back to your family, back to your friends, back to the breakfast table, the brunch table, whatever and wherever, so that these conversations continue. So without delay, I want to kind of just jump into it. I'm all over the place. Just ask you technology and whatever. I saw myself just disappear. Ladies, just first, Jazz, I'll start with you, and then Dr. West. How are you?
That question is so loaded these days. I mean, it's been loaded for a while, but it's super loaded considering what's happening right now. I don't know how I am because I feel so many different things all at once. So I can't honestly answer that for you. I don't know how I am at this current second. I'm happy to be having conversation around this, but that changes.
Got it. Wes, how about you?
I'm just feeling responsible. And what comes with that, feeling tired, some fatigue, thinking about what we can do, how we can help us not to come this way again. What can we do not to repeat these patterns? So my mind is just at times racing, which of course lends itself to no sleep. So I think all of us are tired and we're traumatized. I know I am.
Yeah, I think I love your choice of words, because for me, that's a very interesting place, because I have always been about the we and what can we do, and from family, friends, jobs, just my life, I've always looked at things from that perspective. And this is the first time that I feel like, why do I keep saying we, when the we is a very subset of people that are really interested in making any change at all. There are people that give lip service, people that use their platforms just to build clout, and then you have what it seemed for the longest time, a race of people that just didn't care. Like they hear it, they see it, they walk past it. And I think that some of the most recent incidents have been so violent that people have felt like
Absolutely.
they just can't not say something.
Mm-hmm.
And so, because of the way that society is, what I fear right now, and I use this analogy. Yes, I was very silent yesterday on my media, but I thought about last year, and I think marginalized groups always fight for some type of acceptance, and I
Mm-hmm.
don't like to loop what's happening in our community into just us being another marginalized group fighting for equality when there's a
Yeah.
system that's been built against it. So last year we saw with the LGBTQ alphabet community. Last year we saw
Not the
like
LGBT.
like never.
You can't even add all of them, can we? Just the alphabet.
I don't know, but we saw corporations and brands, all of these like never before. It was like every company that even companies you never hadn't heard of, all of a sudden their logos were rainbows, and it became a more of a like, not that they were even standing behind it, but this is trendy. And
Yeah.
so before I get too excited about people now being vocal and now also using this as a moment to glorify themselves or their brands, I have to keep pausing myself, because I'm not at the place where I can praise. I'm happy that people are acknowledging it. Don't get me wrong. I'm happy that people are speaking out. I don't have any praise for people doing the right thing. So,
and we shouldn't.
I just don't have that. But that's kind of where I am. I'm like at the intersection of, okay, you're speaking out, corporations are speaking out, they're jumping on the bandwagon, but this isn't a bandwagon issue. After all the hype dies down, we will still be Black. And so when I think about for the I would probably say over the last year, I've adopted the thought that racism is not a Black people problem. It's not a problem that we can handle. There's nothing I can do to stop your racism. And for the longest time, me starting to vocalize that, I've even had Black people like, well, I'm like, there's no well in my eyes. Like, it's just not, it's not. I do think that we can aid their understanding and aid white people that are willing to understand. And I think because these things have been so traumatic, me even getting back to that place, what I've appreciated more is that there have been just a handful of people that have reached out to me genuinely. Even some just like, I don't have much money, I lost my job, but I really want to give you whatever I have just so that you can further awareness, because I am finally white people. Yeah. And I'm like, and I'm not, I don't want your money. I don't want any of that.
Don't reach out to me. Reach out to your other white counterpart.
Well, that's been my answer. Like, I don't need anything. I don't need your money. Yeah. Thank you. I'm happy that you're finally hearing. Speak louder to your racist uncle. Speak louder to your racist boyfriend. And that's kind of where I am. When you talk about we, Wes, like, where is the line? Like, because I just feel like it's like, it is not my responsibility to make white people feel better about the fact that they have now realized, like, I don't have it.
No, I actually have been doing sessions, and when I tell groups of 30 to 50 white people what needs to happen, one of the things I tell them is that they need to feel hurt. And they're silent, just like the two of you, like, what? Because people come into this space thinking you're about to tell them, oh, these are just the ways you can help. And I start to say, no, you should be hurt. Yeah, historically, I don't think we ever just go through the conversation of saying what has happened in this country and in the world, not just with Black people, but the colonization, what white supremacy and racism have done globally. It's been atrocity after atrocity. And sometimes I think we don't sit with that. We may sit with it as Black people, but I don't even think we fully sit with it because it's too much. And so when I say we, I mean collectively, but with different roles. I absolutely think there needs to be a critical mass of white people talking to each other and training each other and telling each other this is what we need to do to eradicate racism. What I have faced though is sometimes someone like me has to jumpstart that in terms of educating them on even what to say to each other so that it works and it's not something that harms Black people and other groups of people even more. So I think our role will always be, we just not going to let you have, I think the trauma was actually seeing, we talked about a foot being on our necks, but to actually see a knee on that man's neck and the casualness and kind of smugness and arrogance and evil of racism looking at us. I think it was a spirit staring us in the face, telling this country, if you don't fix this now, you won't be able to recover. And I think white people hear that. So a lot of them hear that and they saw that for the first time. And yeah, I think it's unfortunate that it took that. It's very unfortunate. But I just want racism eradicated. I think it's killing people.
Well, and I think it's not just killing people now, but it's killed people for centuries at this point.
Sure.
And the fact that we can see it and it's so difficult to watch, it's traumatizing. And I've really been in the space, especially over the last month. It's not healthy for people. And what, if I say anything, I've been vocalizing, it's not to both Black and white people. It's not healthy for anybody to see themselves brutalized, under attack, all the time. Everywhere you go, you turn on the TV, and it's whether it's a killing or handcuffs. There's always some type of battery that you see, and it's just not healthy for you to see that on TV, in your text messages, on social media. It's not healthy. Jess, have you had any conversations in these spaces? Or if you were to have a conversation in this space, like what would you offer to a white person asking for direction?
The exact thing that I said earlier. Don't talk to me about that. Talk to your other white friends. Like I kind of understand the sentiment of you reaching out to me and asking because you're trying to show me that you don't stand for this. But that only goes so far, because if you're having dinner with the rest of your white family, or on holidays you're going around the rest of your white family, and they still hold these same views, you reaching out to me and letting me know, okay, you're one person, but you have an entire family that you can educate, that you can talk to about the things that are going wrong. And so asking me for direction, I'm just going to redirect you back to your own people.
I think I get that. There's so many complexities to it, and I'm not really interested in them. And so I think sometimes because I've naturally been willing to have conversations about other things where we lay it out and kind of unpack the layers and kind of go through it, I haven't found myself interested in unpacking and explaining a history that's been rewritten to people that don't want to do that. So I think that we find ourselves at this place now where, Wes, to your point, exactly, now we've seen this, it was violent and it's symbolic.
It's immaterial.
Yeah.
It's immaterial. Yeah, it's when Emmett Till's mother, Mamie Till, said, "Let me show the world what they did to my son," it sparked something in people, man, even people who were racist, to actually see that child, that had happened to him. Sometimes people allow themselves to be disconnected. Look, it's all horrible. It's all a part of supporting a system that gives you privilege, that allows you access, all of those things. But I don't shy away from telling white people, this is what this is. And it's showing up in your job every day. Like if you come to me as a white person and I'm just like, you want to have a conversation about racism? No. But if you want training on how to eradicate it, I'm going to tell you. Because the white people I talk to, their families may be able to help them with some things, and their friends may be able to talk about some things. But to tell them, you can do these 3 things to start to get rid of racism. I'm not going to do it forever. I'm going to train white people on how to do it, and then I'm going to step out of it. Because truly, I think
I'm really interested in that, because I know that you've been hosting these trainings. And white people have been responding to your calls for, if you are interested in learning how to eradicate racism. And I'm sure because there is this notion that white people often have a white saviors complex. We saw it in ministries this week, white pastors coming out and saying that they accept the challenge. You don't accept anything. What you need to accept is the fact, I think the verbiage is wrong. I woke up to a text message yesterday from a friend. He'll probably see this. And he's like, as a white man, my initial thought is, how do I fix this? And what hurts, or what they usually don't want to accept, is you have to start with you.
Yes.
And then you look within, and then you have to go and deal with your network. You can't fix anything. Black people aren't broken here. We're not the ones with the problem. So when you and I won't stay here long, but in teaching white people how to eradicate racism, like, what are the first steps to that, aside from acknowledging?
For me, because we use that word so often, and people think racism is just, I don't like you, or it's overt racism. But to actually talk about the institutionalization and the systemic racism and the ways it shows up, white people, for them in their workplace, what it looks like. Because people are saying, I'm not racist because I don't use the N-word, I don't do these things. But to talk about being complicit in a system, and to talk about how language plays into that, how all of these different components make racism powerful and viable, and makes it run. How did something exist? How's there been 400 plus years of violent oppression of a people, beginning with enslaving them? It's that deconstructing of that I want to tell as many of white people as possible. This is what this is. This is how you can eradicate it. No, it's not a Black person's problem. No, you don't need to feel that's a pity. Oh, the poor Black people. No. We're not the ones whose souls are in danger. We're not the ones who are facing the indictment of having done this harm to people, not just Black people, indigenous people. I mean, white supremacy it's when I go to Africa and I'm in nations and I see what whiteness has done, it is really mind blowing. And it's necessary, I believe, to lay that out and say, hey, let me show you what white supremacy, what racism, what folks who look like you have done. And let me tell you, if you're not doing anything about it, you are the folks that look like you. You're racist. And that's a shock to most white people. They don't see themselves that way.
Most white people don't want to accept. They want, what we hear, that has nothing to do with me. That was the past, or we've moved on from that. You're regurgitating narratives that aren't true. That never happened to you, and there's a lot of rejection. And I don't care about that. I think for those that are willing, I'm happy that you're able to kind of communicate that. I think that.
But let me say real quick, Alex, I get it. I have Black sister friends and Black male friends who say to me, Vonnetta, you carry on with that. I'm not doing that. They may throw some curse words in with it. I just think it's a particular grace for me that, and it's something that I believe is necessary. But when I come out of each training, I come out praying, because it is, it's not the easiest thing to do, but I do believe that some of this will take having some moments like that for people who do it. And I in no way called everybody to go educate or have trainings for white people about eradicating racism. That's not a lot of people's space.
Because I think white people know, you know what I mean? Like I think that they're very well aware of the history of their people and what they've done and how they benefit today. I think that they know. So and just like you said, it's not everybody's space to teach them and to walk them through their history, because I personally feel like they're very aware of their history, and that's why they understand how much privilege they have now. And that's why you get them feeling pity for us, because they understand just how much they have benefited from the actions of their ancestors. And so I personally am looking for I would like to understand and learn about solutions, outside of that and outside of just showing them what they've done in the past, because they know, Alex, that's why you said they're talking about, well, that I didn't do that, or that didn't happen to you, like you
Right.
weren't a slave, like
Right.
I personally was not a slave master, but they know that these things happen. And so it's like you're benefiting from this. How are you going to be the change? If that wasn't you, but you're still upholding racist values and ideals to this day, how are you going to change it today?
And that's the discussion I have. I don't sit and talk to white people about just history. Absolutely not. I wouldn't do that. I think the whole hour that I spend with them goes from what is racism, how does it manifest, and now what do you do? That's the only reason why I'm holding these trainings, to get to that space to say, these are 3 things that you can do. Go tell all your white people in your life, everybody you know, use your platform, start to host trainings yourself, and say, we need to do these things to start to eradicate racism.
Yeah, I don't know if there's anything beyond that, because I honestly don't think that if they don't make the decision, it's not going to change.
Right.
So I think telling that, and to your point, it's not everybody's space to tell them. Some people don't have the tolerance, and I think that's the next point of the conversation that I want to have, because while people are mad, and I understand, like I started this with, I am very mad. I am very mad that
we should be.
As I talk to friends and I talk to family members and friends that had to go back to work after a weekend that we just had, the week that we had last week, they had to go back to work and deal with these same white people that don't acknowledge anything, but they want something from us. It's not just that they want and they use and they manipulate and then try to own our culture over and over and over again. I mean, from that, just that pain there, to I have to now come and sit with you and assume, because you assume, and it's just comments like, well, the laws changed in the 60s. The law changed and nothing changed with it. Like, like, what does that mean? I saw, even I was, I was really kind of disconnected yesterday, and this morning, one of the first videos that I saw, well, the first one I don't want to talk about, but the second video I saw, a woman flagged down the police. A Black woman flagged down the police in California because Black looters were coming to break into her store. There was a reporter there covering it. The police first drive past multiple times. They finally turn around, come back. As they're heading, the reporter's trying to tell them what's going on. She was fair-skinned Latina woman. And the police immediately go to the woman that's been flagging them down and put her in cuffs and arrest her, and then wait for someone to, where are the looters? And I'm like, this is the experience that's constantly ignored. Arrest first, ask questions later. And This woman is in handcuffs while her business is being looted actively, and the police put her in handcuffs. And so there's that, in addition to everything else, we have reason to be mad. We have reason to be upset. And so now there's outrage with the protests that have ensued. And while we know there are bad actors inside of it, a lot of this burning, and there are certain things that we are seeing that we know that are just not us. Like, it's like the most atheist Black person ain't gonna be burning a church, because that's just not. That's just not what
we didn't do that. That wasn't us.
That's just not us. We just
don't burn
we don't
religious buildings.
It's not. No. I mean, and it's just. It's not. We don't call ourselves colored. That's another thing. We're not spray painting. Like, we don't. And I mean,
I saw that picture and I was like, now I know.
No.
False flag when I see one.
Because we know ourselves.
Right. That is.
And what's killing me is, not to go back into the white supremacy conversation, but white supremacy runs so deep. And I use this platform to say this often. A lot of Black people ascribe to white supremacy.
Yes.
And they have heard it, and it's so deeply embedded. If you think, for the first thought that you have when something happens to a Black person is, well, what did he do? Or what did she do? Or what were they doing? If that's your first thought, white supremacy has been embedded in you to think that Black people are innately Black.
It's an ideology. That's a system of thinking.
And so even with this color thing, there were Black people like, well, we are colored. No, we're not. That's what. And
No.
I am triggered with the use of POC in reference to Black people in America.
Yes.
Now, I may be by definition a person of color in the world, but in America, I am Black. I reject person of color because that's not what I am, because I think that erases and ignores and diminishes what has been done to my people on this land. So we're not going to be rebranded just because it's more comfortable for somebody to say person of color, because when you have to, and they get nervous. They don't know whether to say Black, African American.
That's why you got to just say I'm Black. It's okay.
Yeah,
I am Black.
But America hates Black people. I mean, I don't think that really.
Say that one more time for me, Wes. Just
America hates Black people. I don't think that really registers with people sometimes, and we never just sometimes just say that this country hates Black people. That's why they'll remember every atrocity, but what's been done to Black people. That's why you have people of color versus just saying Black. I'll tell you why. People would prefer to include other groups with injustices when they could just be saying, how do we eradicate this 400-year plus evil that's been in this country? And that's hard because the country intrinsically, in its policies, in its legislation, in its imagery, hates Black people.
I have to agree with you. And I think most often I see it, and I also have to bring this up. When we want to remember Pearl Harbor and we want to remember 9/11, but forget slavery. How does that work? Like, with slavery happened in the past, so did Pearl Harbor, so did 9/11. So what's the difference there? So I agree.
I hate Black people.
I agree. I
it
think
likes Black culture, but it hates Black people.
That's just that on that.
I'm speechless behind that, because I'm like, it's sobering. It's hard to hear. You know what I'm saying? I want to be completely honest about that. That is probably one of the hardest things to hear, because I have to still live in this country.
Yes.
You know what I mean? I'm living in this country. Outside of that is, I don't have many other options outside of living in this country, right? There are not a bunch of other places that I can go that actually do like Black people. We see, like you mentioned earlier, Dr. West, is global, the hatred for Black people. You know what I mean? So it's just like, damn, the country that I'm living in, that I'm paying taxes in, that, I am trying to become something in, hates me, and there's nowhere else for me to go.
I think that said so well. You said that beautifully, because there's nowhere else for me to go. This is where I'm a citizen. And I was telling them that I was actually talking to my little sister yesterday, and I was telling her just that, because she's surprised about so many things. But I was reminding her, at this point, you are an adult, but let me be clear. You are a citizen of this country. So there are certain rights that are due you. And so I think oftentimes, like, there's a lack of understanding, and there's a lack of, just because of what's been done so often. And I find myself correcting it more so in younger people when they say, well, if we do this, if we act out, Trump's not going to send us another stimulus check. Trump isn't sending anything. This has nothing to do with Donald Trump. And you going to protest, that is the most American thing that you can do. You not saying the pledge, that's also the most patriotic thing that you can do, in accordance to what the Constitution for this country says. So your freedom to do and express yourself the way that you feel and the way that you want to, that's a freedom that you have. Don't let that be manipulated by people that don't know what they're talking about. So they assume that we have a king and that we should be pledging allegiance to something that is not representative of me. Thinking about it, I don't know when I felt patriotic. I don't think that I've ever owned an American flag. And that's not to say that I never will, but when I think about the freedom that it talks about, for as long as I can remember, I don't think that I have felt that I have those same freedoms. So in that same lane, people are upset, people are protesting, and I think that you're seeing, I honestly don't think where it's been it's been quelled and it's been started to subside because people have gotten frustrated. You actually have this somewhat of a perfect storm right now to where really, as they say, the chickens are coming home to roost, because what you have is 45 million people that we know. This week, it's expected to jump again on Thursday. So we may be up to almost 50 million people that have filed for unemployment. You have to estimate another 15 to 20 million that don't have the ability to file based on the type of job or classification that they have. So you have maybe roughly 70 to 75 million Americans that don't have a job. They don't have anywhere to go. So whereas some of these people may have been anxious to protest in fear of losing their job or some type of retaliation in the past, they don't have that. Also, you see people that we have a very diverse country now. So you have a lot of people that see the injustices. They haven't spoke because of fear, but in the way that you've seen what happened to Breonna Taylor and Ahmaud Arbery, and what you've seen that just happened to George Floyd, and they see that, and maybe they have a Black kid. Because it's now there's this whole thing that white people are coming out. Oh, you're mixed. You're not really Black. So which is it? Like, does the one drop apply, or does it not? All of a sudden, like, it's just, you know what? So you have this perfect storm, and then you have a leader that is inflaming them regularly. That is literally standing on a platform and just drumming it up. I don't really know what the strategy is there. So you have people that are really upset. And then you have, similar to where I was going with Black people accepting white supremacy and in some ways being white supremacists as Black people, which is, it sounds like an oxymoron, but it's just it is the most moronic thing I've ever heard. Using, like, really upset about protesters, and some of these protesters that have got more violent, the looting and the other things the rioting that started to happen. You not only see white people upset about it, and they're very vocal about, the destruction of property, but our point that we've been making is that you're vocal about that and you've said nothing about Black lives. Right. Whether people want to believe, Colin Kaepernick wasn't that great of a player, that was a personal ploy. What he was doing was something that was silent. It was peaceful, and he was doing it based on the advice of a member of the United States military advised him to kneel. And we had a president that took that and made it about a flag, which, if you ask Black people, I tell them all the time, if you ask Black people what we think about that flag, we're not thinking about the flag. It was never about that. So you had the peaceful protest. It was disruptive, and it was disrespectful, and no one listened then. So now you have the rioting, and this is also disruptive and disrespectful, and you don't want to listen. But which is it? What are we? We have people that are. I think the most upsetting thing to me, and I wanted to ask you about this, Wes, when white people quote Martin Luther King to me, I understand that history is often rewritten, but Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. was not a social construct. He wasn't the safe Black that white people try to make him.
Not at all.
And so when I hear that Dr. King would never, and I'm like, from what I know about Dr. King, actually he would. I struggle with responding to that, but I think it's a viable discussion point, because on the same token, we see Black people regurgitating the same thing. Well, Dr. King would never, he wouldn't. And I think that when I thought about Dr. King and his method of nonviolent protest, there was nobody better that I thought could really explain this besides you. So before and Jazz, I don't know if you have questions just about the method, because what we hear, people are like, well, it's supposed to be a peaceful protest. And when I hear peaceful protest and nonviolent protest, they're not the same thing. I don't hear. And I think America has, again, manipulated this into, something that fits safe, that's safe for white people. But I just don't think that's what it is. So can you just give us some insight on like what is the difference between well, you don't even have to address peaceful protests if you don't want to, but obviously there is a difference. What would be the Kenyan method of nonviolent protest? And what would, just in your view as somebody, and I've said this for those that are watching, Dr. West has taught this method, Dr. King's method, for as long as I've known her, which is over 10 years. So I know that she's been teaching it much longer than that. Just talk to us a little bit about what his methods actually were.
Well, the first thing is, Dr. King was focused on the ultimate goal. So I think when people see photos of protesters being attacked in the 60s and them not responding, they start to think, we need more of that, because we need people that are out there basically just willing to be attacked and not do anything. But that's not what nonviolence is. Those protesters using Kenyan nonviolence in the 60s, they actually would go through training together and say, what is our ultimate goal? Okay, our goal in this protest is to get this legislation passed. Okay, well, we want to do sit-ins. We want to do these different things to make that happen. We're going to train people on how not to respond if they're doing a sit-in and somebody comes up and they call them an N-word, or they kick their seat, or they spit on them, because our ultimate goal is not to not be insulted. Our ultimate goal is to win this legislation, to get to this legislation so we can start to make some progress. So nonviolence is goal-centered. It's structured, it's strategic. It actually says in life, I need this posture so that I don't become burdened by hate. Hate, it'll take us out of here. We have, as Black people, we deal with the physical imposition, the psychological imposition of racism, plus because our mamas and our daddies have taught us better, don't treat people that way. That's how we know we didn't burn down no church. Because Black people have been told, there's some things you don't do. And we listen no matter where we came from. We don't burn down churches. We don't burn crosses in people's yards.
There's a perception that nonviolent means, you're just going to march, be about your business, and my understanding of it is that it is indeed disobedient. So you're not.
It is.
These are not civil. People that would be considered civil. It requires civil disobedience and opposition.
Let me say out, there is no protest against racism that white people collectively will like, that this government will like, that this nation will like. There's no protest. You could go outside and say, I'm gonna stand here with a shirt on that says we need to eradicate racism. Somebody gonna come by and say, I don't like that form of protest, because it's a 400-year plus stronghold that white people benefit from. And racism is power hungry and power driven. So if it's about power, white people don't want to give up power. As a collective, you're dealing with a structure that's a part of institutions being complicit for 400 years. That doesn't go quietly. And so when I say America hates Black people, I'm saying institutionally, historically, this country has been okay with things not benefiting Black people. But I think the tide is turning on that.
I think that's actually true. There is not a protest that white people are going to welcome on racism. It's similar to any attack on privilege. Black people that have privilege, it's not something that you want to give up. So and I think that's to be understood. When you hear people say that that method or Dr. King's method is dated and it didn't work, or offer, he was nonviolent and say peaceful, as America would say, and they killed him.
Right.
How do you reconcile that?
One of the things I really know is the majority of people that I encounter haven't really studied nonviolence and don't know what it is. We just believe what we've been told, that it means being passive, that you're just marching. That's all people see. I think that's what media wants us to see. Because if you really understand that each of these campaigns had a goal, and that at the time Dr. King was assassinated, he was dealing with economic injustice and was putting together more plans to address poverty and capitalism in this country. You know, they didn't assassinate Dr. King because he was talking about Black people being treated better or because he was a peaceful protester. They assassinated him because they could see that nonviolence was something that was going to go in and deconstruct their systems. That's the focus of it. It's focused on true peace, which doesn't just mean we don't have tension, it means we have justice. And so when you start to talk about that and you see that something is working to make justice happen and your laws are changing and you can no longer say Black people can't eat here, Black people can't go to school here, and you really just wanted segregation because you think you're better than Black people, and then you come along and you say somebody's messing with our money and they're telling us war is wrong, and how can you send Black people to fight in Vietnam when they don't have rights here in this country, as he told them in A Time to Break Silence? Yeah, you're going to want to get rid of that person. I think the proof that nonviolence was working is in the fact that the man was assassinated. That's not proof that it wasn't working. That's proof that it was working. Why would they want to get rid of somebody whose method wasn't working?
That's like probably the best point that you could make. Like the proof is they took him out of here. So for the people that, because there's a lot of people, we know that a lot of people are involved in the moment. It's an emotional moment for some people.
It should be, yeah.
We is there a requirement for people to step up and understand that life could be lost in this fight?
People, we believe we're in a revolution. You know, I think one of the major things that's a fallacy and a fault of this nation is that instead of responding to the reason why people protest, we look at the protest. That's what happened with Kaepernick. So instead of looking at a people in anguish and enraged, in the streets, and saying, hey, we need to fix this racism, we need to finally get rid of it, the response is, no, they're acting like animals out there. This country that enslaves people, that puts people in internment camps as it did with Japanese people, you know, this country that just recently caged children and separated them from families, says people are violent because they're protesting violent racism. 400 years of it, not just George Floyd, in this nation. America doesn't have a moral leg to stand on to call people violent. And I think to really understand nonviolence, you have to understand it would get to that. As Dr. King said, this nation is the greatest purveyor of violence in the world, the United States of America. So America has issues that it just don't want to deal with. So of course you're not going to want to go back to the root of the protest and say, no, we need to, it's not the response. That's why he said a riot is the language of the unheard. He wasn't saying, oh yeah, y'all go be violent. He was saying you need to listen to the people, because the people are saying to you, this racism is hurting us, is killing us, and they're rising up and they're not taking it. That's what riots say. Now, riots and violence, and I struggle with the word riot right now. I think because people want to label protesters and everyone as violent, you know, we start to use that word riot to talk about everybody, and then it becomes these people out here rioting. You're like, no, they weren't rioting. They were peaceful protesters, or they were nonviolent protesters. And that language just begins to stereotype people. But it is the response to the injustice. And instead of dealing with the injustice and getting true peace, we look at, and this country looks at, the response to the injustice. But sure. I think more now, people are responding to the injustice. And that's what we see now. People saying, no, this isn't just about George Floyd.
Pharaoh is joining the conversation. And Pharaoh, you went out in New York City this week and saw some of what was happening. Aside from the feeling that people were just at their wits' end and upset, what did you see?
Wow, it was a really a full, and I want to say hi to everybody.
Hi there.
Well, good morning. it honestly was a full sensory of emotion. Honestly, it was a lot of confusion. It was a lot of, and mind you, I was in the downtown area, Soho area of Manhattan. So, and this was after the first, I want to say first or second day of quote unquote rioting. Um, it was, I mean, there was just an uneasy confusion about what to do, how, especially from, you can tell the residents of the area were a bit confused. How to feel about it. A lot of them obviously on the whiter side than darker side. Um, and you can tell that there was a sense of something happened here. Um, it was an emotional space, an emotional energy that was there that I think I'll never forget, and that I think that's a lot of the reason why I wanted to experience it for myself, opposed to just seeing it on media and the falsehoods on media. I mean, just the sound you heard around was just kind of rebuilding of an area on top of helicopters looming, multiple helicopters looming, and the sense of it had almost a burning scent as well. It was a full sensory experience.
Do you feel
Yeah,
like that there was a consensus of people seeking change? Because you mentioned that people were of the fair skin were more like something happened here.
yeah.
Do you feel like the message is getting lost? Like this is why something is happening. This isn't because
Well,
I think in any situation there are always going to be detractors and people that say, "Oh, this is why they're doing this," or kind of throw something at that. Do you think that the point? Because what I've seen in demonstrations in states all across the country, I see people peaceful. I see people laying in the streets with their hands behind their back and really demonstrating the issue is at the core we can lift and it's the simplest things, right? It takes the woman that I was just mentioning. It took them less than 30 seconds to arrest her as she was flagging them down because people were looting her business. It took 4 days for them to arrest Derek Chauvin for a murder that was captured on video for 9 minutes. And I think those are the messages that are people that people are trying to get across. Did you feel like the message was resonating at all, Pharaoh?
well, I think that it was a forced submission of at this point we have to understand what's going on. I think people, and what I mean by that is people were there to either outside of their homes or, I mean, there was a sense of for some an aloofness to what it was, just just trying to articulate to either from someone on the phone or one of their friends, um, what happened where and all that. But I think ultimately it's forcing a lot of the people, a lot of white people to either be a part of the conversation, be a part of change, or realize what side of justice they stand on. Um, and there are going to be some that, and I honestly feel that there are going to be some that stand on the not so ideal side. But from what I gathered, again, this is the Soho area of Manhattan. This is a fairly, if you will, affluent area to white people, and
Oh
people
yeah, I
from
would
around
call
the
it Soho
world.
a more. It's very liberal but affluent, like a
Yeah, yeah,
younger mindset. So
yeah, yeah.
that's interesting.
And there certainly was a camaraderie there. As it was a lot of cleanup, in the area. I actually got an opportunity to go around in the city, and I rode from Soho. I don't know if anyone's familiar in the New York area to Midtown. That's about a 15-20 minute bike ride. In which I did run into protest, the actual protest, without even trying to. Honestly, I just kind of like wanted to get an idea of what the city felt like, and you can definitely feel an emptiness there. Um, uh, 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 and until I kind of became a part of the protest, is when I felt a sense of the camaraderie, and there's an energy there that was not violent. It really was not a violent energy.
Yeah, that's
Obviously,
what
there.
I was. was hoping to gauge from you, because I think there is, and I think Wes, you were alluding to this. We have to be in control of the narrative, and so
Yeah.
that's why we have to be in the forefront of these conversations. We can't really run. It's going to be painful. It's going to be difficult. And Wes, you were also saying that at the core of nonviolence was people seeking change and seeking solutions and effective
Yeah.
solutions. And Jazz and I often talk about lip service and
Mm-hmm.
how people are very quick to with lip and fingers, keyboard fingers, that people are just, this should happen, this should happen, this should happen, this should happen, and nothing. Then it's frustrating because I kind of come from a
Yeah.
place of I'm about action, and
Yeah.
it's and really doing what I can. Like in this instance, like there are people really kind of compromising. The beliefs are all over the spectrum, but at current, we're still in the midst of a pandemic. And so there's a virus that, from all that we can tell, has not slowed down at all. And there are people out there. And I think as we try to find that space, and I'm interested in just on the thoughts of all three of you. What are some tangible things that people that may be immunocompromised and can't really be protesting at the time, and maybe they have the financial means or don't? What are some tangible things that we can do? And I'm not really talking about white people. That's what people want everybody to do. Like, let's talk about how white people feel. And they need to do a lot for them. But in this moment that things are starting to shift, or we are demanding a shift, what is it? To me, it's unclear. What are we demanding on paper? It's not one solution.
Right.
It's not just police reform. It can't be one thing. It has to be multiple things that we are, and it also has to be attacked on more than just one level. These are not sweeping changes that happen. We have laws in place that say that we are equal. They are ineffective. So how do we change the landscape? And I'm seeing things that I have never expected out of Minneapolis. Like there was I think it was Minnesota State University first severed ties with the Minneapolis the police department.
Yeah.
The day after the video came out. The president had nothing. I want nothing to do. Canceled their contract. Last night, Minneapolis Public Schools severed their contract with police departments. And I think that that's the type of change that we have to see. If we start to get vocal for our local school systems and call them. I'm going to call some, and I don't have any children, but I'm calling and I want to know, I vote here. I pay taxes here, so my money pays these bills. So I think those are the types of changes that I want to see. What other changes can we affect on smaller scales? Aside from me, I feel like I'm beating a dead horse as much as I say vote locally, vote on the state level, vote, you need to know who your commissioner is. You need to, or your board of commissioners, you need to know the people on your city council. If you don't know these people and they are making decisions on your behalf, you are at risk, because they can make a decision that's going to affect you and you're going to be blindsided every single time. These government officials are kind of keeping people bound. So really quick, I just want to get some suggestions, and then I got one last question, Wes, because I would hope hopefully you can give us some wisdom and some guidance on this, because I just want to express a feeling that I have that I want to end with. But just solutions, Farrell, what do you think a solution collectively could be for us within our own communities?
It's so funny that you bring that up, because I was on the phone for about 3 hours yesterday with a friend of mine and attempting to tackle this very large question. I think the first thing we have to decide is who are we? I don't want, actually, I'm not going to go in that direction. I'm going to try my best to answer the question that you asked. I'm going to be with you and saying we need to. I think the first things, and I know that they're obvious, but I think it's worth being reiterated. We have to, as you just said, vote at the state level. You have to be involved in your community, in your actual community, in your borough, in your 3 to 4 mile radius, understanding who's going out for government opportunities, starting there and knowing and being a part of the conversation. If there's a city hall meeting, if there is a board meeting, if there's anything in regards to, your community, we have got as people to be a part of that conversation. And I mean young people. I mean, if you're going to take off work to sit and be home for a day, you need to also consider taking off work to go to a city hall meeting and being active in the conversation.
Because they're not expecting you.
They're not expecting you.
They're not expecting you to show up.
And you're tactical when you come to something, especially in numbers. If 7 or 8 20 to 30-year-old people show up at a city hall meeting, it would be so impactful that your voices would be would just ram through that entire meeting. It would be ridiculous. But we're not there. We're not taking into account there because really our opportunities, well, not even opportunities to get there, but we don't show up in those spaces as often as we should. So the types of things that of our concerns that may not be of the concern of someone that is in a different generation, a latter generation, or an earlier generation, they're not taking into account. Be a part of the conversation, and I think I got to start there.
I think too. I agree with that. I think educating people, because it's so easy to tell people to vote.
Yeah.
And vote locally, but if you don't even know what these seats do for your community, I can't tell you to go and vote locally if you don't even know what that means. You know what I mean? Like if you don't know what an alderman does, me telling you to go vote for somebody, or like we have to educate, and that's on a micro level, right? Like within our own community, people need to actually know if they're going to go vote, what they're voting for, what these people can do, how it can affect them on a day-to-day basis. And then I also think, just because we're in an age of just like, we're in kind of like a microwave age, right? Like everything is instant, we want everything to happen very, very fast. And I think true change takes a while. Now, we have been fighting a fight for change for a very, very long time, but I don't know that it's an overnight thing, especially when we know for sure within our own community that there's so much education that still needs to happen before we can start to see real change. And when we educate each other, my biggest ask is that we do it with grace. Like we can be towards each other condescending when we feel like we know more than another person, or another person doesn't know as much as we know, and we kind of want to teach them it. We want to talk at them, or it's like very matter of fact, or you want to be snarky, or you know what I mean? Like we want to embarrass them. We have to stop trying to do that to each other, because the fact of the matter is a lot of us don't know. There's so much shit that I don't know. I just want to learn, but it's like you can get to a point where you're afraid to ask other people who are more intelligent than you, because you don't want them coming down on you. Nobody wants to be made to feel small or stupid. Nobody wants to be embarrassed when they're just asking a question. So
True.
On a very micro level, we have to start educating each other with a lot of grace, and just understanding what our local elections are about, if that's the route that you choose to go, or just treating each other differently. Because I don't know that this change happens tomorrow, but if we can start small, it might not be in our lifetime, but if we can start small, our kids, our grandkids, they may be able to see a lot different, because we're seeing a different America than our grandparents saw.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
Saw. You know what I mean? It's a slow burn. And I know right now we want it to be very quick, and we want to pop it in the microwave for 30 seconds and then come out with, kumbaya. I don't know that's not the way that this country operates, but we have to start small, and we have to be patient also.
Very true.
I like to. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead, please.
Yeah, I'll come back to you. But I just want to. What suggestions you have?
I actually think one of the things we need to remember is we each can do something. Protest has become defined as being in the streets, but that's not everybody's way to protest. And it's not the only way to protest. There are several forms of direct action. And we just have to ask, what is the way that I can play a part and I can step up for justice? And what Jazmine is saying is true. Education is so important. Somebody has to get on each post We need people who are educating in communities. We need people who are advocating. We need people who are raising money. We need people who are signing petitions. We need people who are in every area at town hall meetings, at city hall meetings. We need to make informed decisions when we vote. It's more than just saying I voted, but who'd you vote for? Did you vote for people who cared about justice and common good for the most people? Or was it a selfish vote? We have to do also some, I think, character education, some citizenship education. What does it mean to be a concerned citizen? There's something each one of us can do. I want to encourage the people who are watching and listening that if you can't go to the streets and protest, if you're not comfortable with that, that does not mean you can't play a courageous role in getting systemic change and getting justice, not just in this nation, but across the globe. So those are some of the ways we can step up and speak out on injustice.
I appreciate that, and I think those ways are really, really important. I think Pharaoh and Jazz and Wes, thank you so much, because I think it's important to know that you can do something. You can make a phone call. I want to, Jazz, you hit on something that that as I've just been watching this coverage kind of shook me to the core. Like, don't embarrass people and don't demean people for wanting information. On the flip side, I think you also said, Jazz, that we're seeing things that our parents didn't see. And in so many ways, like, this type of racism kind of skipped a generation for a bit, because it was not as intent, like, as in your face at the 50s and 60s. We had the 70s and all this love around, and the 80s. I mean, other things happened. But one thing that, like, jolted me, and I think that people are angry, and people are, as we know, these riots are the language of the unheard. And to hear, I think, Wes, you helped with the understanding of what nonviolence means. And so a lot of people are going to walk away from this conversation thinking, nonviolence is not a peaceful protest. These things aren't always going to be peaceful, and white people are not going to be acceptive of the fact that you want racism gone. I think the mayor of Atlanta said something that kind of just had me upset for like 3 days. And it was the night that Atlanta got a little reckless. And people, I think you should be concerned when the people that you are protesting against start to praise you. And so the mayor of Atlanta made statements, and some people like I said, they ascribe to white supremacy, or they ascribe to oppression. And they quoted things like, "Oh, I felt like my mama was telling me to go to sleep." And what she said was 3 things that kind of just threw me. And Wes, I need some guidance, and I need some wisdom, because maybe I took them the wrong way. But she came out on a night that a city that is the presumptive Black Mecca. If there's any city that I think needs to make a stand for attacks against Black people, it's Atlanta. And people revere Atlanta for so many reasons. There are historical riots from Atlanta and movements in Atlanta that have made a difference. And on that night, she said that she told these people that they were an embarrassment. And I think to diminish someone's pain to the point of calling them an embarrassment is totally opposite of what a leader should do. In the same vein, she said, "This is not who we are." We can all argue on that. I think that the collective this is exactly who we are. And she said, "This is not who America is, and this is exactly who America has been." So for people that kind of struggle with, well, I want to be obedient, and we've established that in so many ways that I'm not talking about destroying property and being destructive, right, and hurting people and harming people, but the act of a nonviolent protest is not civilly obedient. And so in so many ways, I was disheartened to see that. I felt that she was literally saying that like, these people and the way that they've expressed their pain. She made an argument that Atlanta did not even act like this after Dr. King was assassinated. While the rest of the country, it's documented that there was unrest and Black people were in the streets and there were riots and things. Atlanta didn't do that. Atlanta went home. And my knee-jerk response was that between the time that Dr. King was assassinated until now, 2020, how many Black bodies have been lost at the hands of law enforcement or vigilante white people? We're still having this same fight. This anger. I just felt like everything about the statement was tone deaf, and I think I think when it comes to a generation or a people, and I don't want to focus on the mayor specifically, but there are people that will diminish this pain that people feel, and kind of shrug their actual pain off. I think it's disheartening for a younger Black person that lost their job, has $100,000 in student loans, and could be murdered at any point, at any time, in a country that does not care about them. And likely the officer will walk. I just think that when we have these, how do we navigate that?
Well, I think the first realization is that, leaders have about the leadership issue. Leaders have different capacities, and they're bringing different things, and each of us has some faults, some things we need to improve on. And I just saw in that an example of someone who was leading from a space, a motherly space, when what we potentially needed was a space of, I understand, I hear you, but I still say this is what we need to do. That type of thing that identifies with and says to you, I know why you're in pain, and I'm not going to dismiss your pain. And that's difficult. And I think, those 6 officers being arrested for excessive force is an example of trying to right that and say, let me be sure I'm on the side of justice and doing the right thing. People have sparks of consciousness. And I think at this point, one of the things we have to do is look at people when we can, because we're in the moment on so many things and emotions are running high. Look at people holistically, and understand that, okay, you just said the wrong thing in that situation, but I think you do care about people. Come on, show that you care about people. That's how I deal with those things. Otherwise, I'd be eternally frustrated because somebody's always standing up saying something just dumb, or that you just think you shouldn't have said that.
I actually want to that point, Dr. West, that actually happened to me when the protests first, when people started looting. I was one of those people that I was just like, why are we looting in our neighborhoods? Like, why are we destroying businesses? And it was because I just didn't understand, right? First of all, it was out of fear because I didn't want to become collateral damage in that. And then it also was just because I hadn't evolved in that particular moment. I was a prime example of someone, I posted about it, like, why are we looting businesses? And people had to educate me, like, look, this is about way more than businesses. Those things can be replaced. Like, this is an uprising of not only people who are disgusted with the racism, but it's also a class thing. Because when you see a lot of the looting, especially looting was happening literally across the street from where I live, all around my neighborhood. I live in downtown Philadelphia, right? These are people who were coming from different parts of Philly into these businesses where they don't typically have the resources nor the access to get the things that are in these businesses, right? So it's a matter of class. People who can't typically afford these things coming to get what they feel like they want it. And once somebody was able to educate me, my own boyfriend is telling me, like, they just get in what they think at this point, material things. They want to be on some fly shit. They want to have access and clothes that they can't typically afford because of, wage inequality and all of that. They're just getting what they feel is owed to them. And it was at that moment when I'm like, that was the wrong thing for me to say. I should not have been asking about the businesses because they're just businesses. And then I was able to change my stance. But I think that's also very important. We have to be in a space where our minds can be changed and where we are welcome to being educated and welcome to understanding other people's pain. Because as I always say within the Black community, one of our issues is classism and elitism. You know what I mean? And so we don't typically look. When we reach a certain status within our community, I think a lot of people in Atlanta are guilty of this, and that's why we look at Atlanta as the Black Mecca, because it's a place where we've been able to see Black people get out of poverty and be successful and be around other successful Black people, right? So typically when we get to that level, we start looking down at other people who aren't there yet.
No, you're absolutely, you're so right, and that is an actually entirely different show, but it's a real a real conversation, because there are so many even Black people that feel like this is not my lane. I wouldn't be affected by this, but you would if you came outside of the bubble that you live in. You absolutely would, and I've been talking to those same people, and maybe it's a discussion that we'll have, because I think that a lot of people are coming to a realization like this is a collective problem that we all have to work together to address. And so I appreciate that, Jazz, because also we talk about this every time I pull the cabinet together. It's literally about new thoughts and people evolving and realizing that maybe I shouldn't have said that, even myself. And so even listening to both Wes and Jazz, your perspective there, maybe I will give the mayor some grace, because I was still mad about that. Added to, I've still been mad. I'm still mad. I'm like, how the hell you gonna call me an embarrassment?
Can I say something, Alex? I think we have to, it's hard to navigate being humane sometimes and just caring about each other. So, but children, we're not talking to each other before these crises come up. I don't think we're having enough conversations. And I've had the opportunity to talk to some teenagers who ask me questions about violence and rioting, and they say, well, riots get the attention. And I've shared with them some things about just community. And I think what we're seeing now is a reflection of sometimes we just don't have a sense of community for whatever reason, because of history in this nation where we are now. And it's hard to explain unless we start to really talk to each other to say, okay, what happens if we don't have this Walgreens? And we know Walgreens is a symbol for some people of capitalism, but my grandmother gets her medicine from Walgreens. So do I want to burn Walgreens down? Because that will impact somebody's grandmother, somebody's family member. And in those moments when you've seen a man be murdered on camera, you're not thinking about those things because that rage is coming up. And what I saw in Atlanta is Black men at Camp Creek stopping young people from coming in and saying to them, hey, let's talk about this. I know you're in pain, but let's see what we can do in a different way. That's what I'm saying. We're going to have to go have some conversations and meet people and tell people, I'm not dismissing your pain. I'm not diminishing you. I am asking, let's think about strategically what this will do. It's just hard to get into strategy when you see George Floyd.
Yeah, when you're enraged, like you're not thinking about strategy. That's another realization that I had, because that was my initial thought too. Like, why are we not strategizing more and having an actual plan? But rage is not a plan. You don't plan to be pissed off. You don't plan to see a man being murdered. You know what I mean? Like you don't plan any of these things. And to the point of Mayor Keisha. And anybody, right, who says the wrong thing, we also have to look at how they react to saying the wrong thing. So
yeah, absolutely.
Absolutely. Apologetic, but if you keep saying the wrong thing and you keep posting pictures of your mac and cheese, I'm gonna think you an agent at some point. You know what I'm saying?
Oh, you know what? I think Jazz. I think
you gotta show some pay.
I think we have to. We, in so many ways, and for so many of us that don't want to be, I struggle with this too over these last 3 weeks. Like, three, and it's like I'm not in the space to get into arguments with people, and I'm not in the space to, I have always been someone that is looking for solutions and I'm willing to pull people together to take action. And this now, Immunity Nation, is a place that I'm able to do that, where people can come together and we can have conversations and we can talk about solutions. And then some of us have to go. And everybody that comes and listens and take these conversations, you go back and you do that thing. It's not an easy place to be. It's not an easy space to be in. I often wonder, why do I care so much? But the truth is, we have to care if we want to see this change. We have to care. We have to be the ones that are kind of leading the charges, the same charges that we're talking about here. We have to be the ones that kind of leading those in the field. I gotta wrap it up. Pharaoh, let's have your final thoughts.
Final thoughts. I think that we have an opportunity now to. We have a lot. We've done a lot. I think I've heard a lot of acknowledgement from our side of, hey, this is um, not just a cry of pain, but the this is an overarching issue that we're all kind of on the same page about, and supporting one another. And we need to continue to support. I think that, and have a sense of understanding and compassion for a lot of the pain that we're experiencing, a lot of pain that Black people have gone through for over the years, and really have a not, I won't say it's beyond strategy, but it's like we have to have a sense of acknowledgement for the people that are that are out today, and the causes that have been put in place. Not the causes, but the experiences that have been put in place, for us to really come through this and
Yes.
be optimistic about what we're going to do and how we're going to get there. And the road is not short. It's a very long road, but we have to acknowledge the presence of progression.
I
So
think that's big. The road isn't short. This is not something. It's not going away, and it hasn't gone away. And it comes back and it rears its heads in different ways. So I think that's spot on, Jazz.
Yeah, just stay curious. Allow your mind to be open and your opinions and thoughts to be changed during this time because there are so many different ways to go about this. And as Dr. West said, everybody has a different position to play. So just be okay with whatever your position and your role is. Everybody can't go out and protest. Everybody is not financially able to donate, but we do all have a responsibility, whether that be on a macro or a micro level within our own community as Black people. We all have a responsibility, and we all just need to be open to understanding what that responsibility is and then carrying out that responsibility.
No doubt. Beautifully said. Dr. West.
I wanted to share with people just a small nugget. The definition that I use most often for nonviolence is that it's love-centered strategic non-cooperation with evil. And I wanted everybody to hear all of those words. Love-centered strategic non-cooperation with evil. It just resists non-violently. And it doesn't bring to the table the desire to hate or be destructive towards people, but it does want to destroy systems and policies and ideologies that cause injustice. And it does want to defeat injustice. So I just want to highlight that and recommend for people a look at the Birmingham campaign and Why We Can't Wait, which includes Dr. King's letter from Birmingham jail. And I believe in that letter, he gives excellent explanation and understanding of what direct action is. Not saying that Dr. King is the source or the king of all things. I just think he had some strategies that, again, were they not working, and were he not being effective in some way with eradicating poverty and racism and war, they wouldn't have assassinated him on that balcony in Memphis. And I want to say to people, I just want to really encourage us because I know it's hard, it's difficult, and there's a lot of rage. And I know I never tell people you shouldn't feel rage about that. I do say after 3 days of rage or however many days of rage, channel that into some ways that we can strategically build community. Because if it's really about saying racism isn't right and white supremacy isn't right, then we have to get rid of those things. We can't continue to let them exist here. And we play our part. White people play their part. Other communities play their part. But we have to say collectively, this thing isn't right. It's not only that it's been here too long, it never should have existed. It's ridiculous. It's evil. And it's something that if we don't get rid of it, it will continue to destroy people. And we don't ever want to see, I don't ever want to see a video like I saw with George Floyd again, ever. I don't ever want another 6-year-old girl not to have her father because he's Black. Now, it may happen again, but we can change these systems, working together. Black people have a role in that. White people really got to step up to do this work. And then we collectively, caring about each other and saying, I know we come from different backgrounds, different races, different gender identities, all of those things. We just got to build community, but we can't do it at the expense of justice. Community won't come when there's injustice. So we have to get rid of that fallacy that we're going to be some kumbaya people. And there's still not systemic justice, and racism is still institutionalized in this nation. But working together, we can make some real changes.
Thank you. I agree with that. I think now is the time more than any. Yes. I think, like we said, we have this perfect storm of situations. And people, what I love about now is that now you have the ability to not just hear, but do. You have time. And so there are resources available. We will put resources out and even just ways what we will continue, obviously, to having this discussion, but we will put those resources and make those resources available for people that want to learn more about Kenyan methods and the ways that you can really involve yourself to make some systemic change, and so that the change starts to affect us in a positive way and not a negative way. I think that this discussion must continue. We'll continue to have this discussion for the rest of the week. It's been kind of sobering for me to not have to come on this platform and talk through that pain, and I'm actually glad that I waited to process it and not just come and sit behind a mic or a screen and yell at you for 2 hours. So my hope and desire is as we continue to have these conversations, you continue to have these conversations in your communities as well. Finally, Farrell, how do people keep up with you?
You can reach me on Instagram at p.poppington. That's p.poppington. Okay.
Miss Henley-Brown?
I'm on Twitter at jhenleybrown_.
jhenleybrown_ on Twitter. And Dr. West?
I'm at Vonnetta L. West everywhere. VONNETTALWEST on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook.
Very, very cool. I am Alex Unmuted on everywhere, and that is going to do it for Unmuted Nation today. We are back tomorrow, 1 p.m. Eastern on BossFM Talk, and we air at 10 p.m. on Twitter and Facebook every weekday, okay? Remember, today is greater. Believe it, speak it, and live it. It's been hard for me to say that. You have to make the choice to be great. Your situation is not your destination. Instead, make it your motivation. I will see you tomorrow. Thanks for watching.
Unmuted Nation, weekdays, 1 p.m. Eastern on BossFM Talk.